Brianna's announcement came through our team chat at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday that started like any other. Team meeting in Conference Room B in 15 minutes. Important updates regarding Project Aurora leadership. I stared at the message, my coffee growing lukewarm in my hands. 2 years, 730 days of building Project Aurora, from a single sketched idea on a whiteboard to something that could revolutionize how small businesses handle inventory management. 2 years of 18-hour days, missed weekend plans, and pouring every ounce of creative energy I had into making this software sing. The conference room filled quickly. Brianna entered with someone I'd never seen before, a young woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and designer clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She looked nervous, fidgeting with her phone and avoiding direct contact with anyone. "Everyone, I want you to meet Zara Pemberton," Brianna announced with forced enthusiasm. "She'll be taking over as lead project manager for Aurora, effective immediately." The words hit me like I'd walked into a wall. Lead project manager, my position, the role I'd held since Aurora was nothing but an ambitious concept. "Zara brings fresh perspective and innovative thinking to our team," Brianna continued, not making contact with me. "She has incredible insights about user experience and modern workflow optimization." I watched Zara's face carefully. Instead of confidence or excitement, I saw something else entirely. She looked terrified. Her hands trembled slightly as she waved hello. And when someone asked about her background, she mumbled something about still learning and hoping to contribute meaningfully. "My name is Reena, and I've been working in project management for 8 years. Before I dive deeper into what happened next, could you please take a few seconds to tell me in the comments where you're listening from? Because I want to know where my story is reaching people who understand what it feels like to watch your work get handed to someone else. And please like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification. This story has twists you absolutely will not see coming." After the meeting, I approached Brianna privately. "Can we talk about the transition timeline? I want to make sure Zara has everything she needs to succeed." Brianna looked uncomfortable. "Actually, Reena, we need you to hand over all materials by Friday. Zara will be working independently on Aurora moving forward." "Independently?" "Brianna, this project has interconnected systems that took months to develop. The database architecture alone requires understanding of 12 different integration points." "How will she?" "Zara is very capable," Brianna interrupted. "Sometimes bringing in new leadership is exactly what a project needs to reach the next level." That evening, I began organizing 2 years' worth of work. Project timelines, budget breakdowns, technical specifications, vendor relationships, testing protocols, hundreds of documents that represented countless hours of strategic thinking and problem solving. As I compiled everything, a strange pattern started emerging. I noticed something odd about how this transition was being handled. Usually, when someone new takes over a major project, there's extensive knowledge transfer, meetings to discuss challenges, collaborative sessions to review critical decisions, gradual handoff of responsibilities. None of that was happening here. Instead, I was being completely removed while Zara was expected to somehow manage a complex software development project without any guidance. It felt deliberately designed to fail. Friday arrived. I handed Zara a comprehensive transition folder containing every detail she could possibly need. This covers all current vendors, budget allocations, timeline milestones, and technical requirements. I explained, "If you have any questions about anything, please don't hesitate to reach out." Zara accepted the folder, but looked overwhelmed. "Thank you. I'm sure I'll figure it out." Her voice carried no conviction whatsoever. "Zara, seriously, this project is manageable, but it requires understanding how all the pieces fit together. You don't have to do this alone." She gave me a weak smile. "My uncle, Brianna, thinks it's better if I develop my own approach without being influenced by previous methods." Uncle. The word hung between us for a moment. Suddenly, everything made sense. Zara wasn't some experienced hire brought in for her expertise. She was Brianna's niece, handed a senior role through family connections. But something in her demeanor told me there was more to this story than simple nepotism. Over the next 3 weeks, I watched Project Aurora begin to unravel. Budget reports showed spending had increased 40%, while progress stalled completely. The development team started working longer hours, trying to compensate for unclear direction. Two key vendors sent formal letters expressing concern about change specifications that conflicted with previous agreements. Meanwhile, I started paying closer attention to Zara's behavior during company meetings. What I observed was fascinating and deeply disturbing. Whenever Zara shared an idea, and some of her ideas were genuinely innovative, she would immediately follow up with self-deprecating comments. But I'm probably wrong about that. Or, I don't really know what I'm talking about. When people responded positively to her suggestions, she would backtrack and defer to others. Most telling was how she interacted with Brianna. During one meeting, Zara proposed a user interface modification that would significantly improve functionality. It was brilliant, but the moment Brianna raised an eyebrow, Zara crumbled. Actually, that's probably too complicated, Zara said quickly. We should stick with the original design. I was overcomplicating things again. I watched Brianna's expression. She hadn't said a word, but somehow Zara had interpreted disapproval and immediately abandoned her excellent idea. This wasn't normal workplace dynamics. This was something much deeper. That evening, I went home and started researching Brianna's family background. Through professional networking sites and public records, I pieced together information about her relationship with Zara. Brianna had been the successful older sister who took over their family's consulting business when their father retired. Zara was the younger sister's daughter, who had been raised with constant reminders about her aunt's achievements. Family photos showed Zara at various ages, always positioned slightly behind Brianna, always looking uncertain. But what really caught my attention were quotes in industry publications where Brianna mentioned her niece. Zara has potential, but she tends to overthink things, Brianna had said in one interview. She's very creative, though she sometimes needs guidance to channel that creativity productively. These weren't supportive statements. They were careful undermining disguised as constructive feedback. I started documenting every interaction I witnessed between them. When Zara suggested streamlining our reporting process, Brianna responded with, "That's an interesting perspective, though we need to consider whether it's practical, given your current experience level." When Zara successfully resolved a vendor dispute, Brianna acknowledged it by saying, "Good job asking the right people for help." Every compliment came with a qualifier. Every success was attributed to someone else's guidance. Every mistake was proof of Zara's limitations. I began to understand that Zara wasn't failing Project Aurora because she lacked ability. She was failing because she'd been trained to doubt every instinct she had. During one particularly revealing meeting, our development team leader asked Zara about database optimization priorities. Her initial response was sophisticated and technically sound. She clearly understood the infrastructure requirements and had ideas for improving performance. But then she caught Brianna's expression, which to me looked completely neutral, and her confidence evaporated instantly. "Actually, I should probably research this more before making recommendations," Zara backtracked. "I don't want to suggest something that might cause problems later." The development team leader looked confused. "But what you just described would solve our current bottleneck issues." "That's exactly what we need." "I know," but Zara glanced at Brianna again. "Maybe we should table this discussion until I've had time to review best practices more thoroughly." I watched a brilliant solution get abandoned because Zara had been conditioned to fear her own competence. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I opened a new document and began writing what I would later realize was the most important analysis of my career. I titled it, "Psychological Assessment, Systematic Confidence Undermining in Professional Development." What followed was a detailed examination of every interaction I'd witnessed, cross-referenced with Zara's actually excellent contributions that she'd immediately second-guessed into oblivion. I documented how Brianna used subtle language patterns to maintain control, how she positioned herself as the authority while keeping Zara dependent on external validation, how she offered opportunities designed to highlight limitations rather than build competence. But most importantly, I analyzed Zara's natural abilities when she forgot to be afraid of them. Her user experience insights were sophisticated. Her technical understanding was deeper than she realized. Her project management instincts were actually superior to traditional approaches in several key areas. The pattern became clear. Zara had been systematically trained to sabotage herself at the moment of success. Every time she demonstrated competence, she'd been taught to retreat into uncertainty. Every achievement was reframed as luck or help from others. Every mistake was evidence of her fundamental inadequacy. This wasn't professional development. This was psychological manipulation disguised as mentorship. As I compiled months of observations into a comprehensive analysis, I realized I was documenting something far more serious than workplace nepotism. I was exposing decades of carefully orchestrated psychological abuse designed to keep Zara capable enough to be useful, but insecure enough to remain controllable. The most devastating part was that Zara had no idea it was happening. She genuinely believed she was incompetent because everyone who claimed to care about her had spent years convincing her it was true. 3 weeks after I'd been removed from Project Aurora, Brianna sent me a message requesting an urgent meeting. The project was hemorrhaging money, deadlines were slipping, and upper management was asking serious questions about leadership decisions. I agreed to meet, knowing exactly what she wanted. But I also knew she was about to discover something that would change everything for both her and Zara forever. When Brianna asked me to return to save Project Aurora, I told her there was something she needed to review first, something I'd left in our shared documentation drive before my departure. Check folder transition analysis when you get back to your office, I said calmly. Read everything there before we discuss my potential return. Brianna looked puzzled, but agreed. As she walked away, I felt a complex mixture of anticipation and sadness. What she was about to discover would destroy her relationship with Zara, expose her as a manipulative abuser, and force Zara to confront the devastating truth about what her aunt had been doing to her mind for decades. The revenge I'd planned didn't require me to lift a finger against either of them. I had simply revealed the truth of what was already happening, documented it thoroughly, and presented it in a way that made denial impossible. In 2 hours, Brianna would open that folder and realize that everyone in the company was about to understand exactly what kind of person she really was. And Zara would finally see that her supposed incompetence was actually manufactured trauma designed to keep her trapped. The most brutal part was that both of them would have to live with this knowledge forever, and everyone around them would know it too. I got the call from Brianna exactly 2 hours and 17 minutes later. Her voice sounded different, strained, almost hoarse. Reena, we need to talk immediately. Can you come back to the office? Did you review the materials I mentioned? There was a long pause. Yes, we need to discuss this in person. When I arrived, Brianna was sitting in her office with the blinds drawn. The transition analysis folder was open on her screen, and she looked like she hadn't moved from that position since opening it. How long have you been documenting this? She asked without looking at me. 3 weeks, since the day you announced Zara would replace me. 3 weeks? She finally turned to face me. You've been watching us, analyzing our family dynamics, building some kind of psychological profile. I've been observing workplace interactions that seemed unusual. Everything I documented happened in professional settings where other employees could witness the same behaviors. Brianna closed her laptop. What exactly do you want from me? I want Project Aurora restored to functional management. I want transparent leadership that doesn't involve undermining team members. And I want acknowledgement that Zara deserves better than what's been happening to her. You don't understand the complexities of our family situation. I understand that you've spent years convincing a talented woman that she's incompetent in order to maintain control over her career and personal choices. That's not complexity, that's manipulation. The office door opened and Zara walked in. She looked exhausted, carrying a stack of project reports that were clearly overwhelming her. Aunt Brianna, I need help with the vendor negotiations again. I think I'm misunderstanding something fundamental about the contract terms, and I don't want to. She stopped when she saw me. Oh, I didn't realize you were meeting with someone. Brianna and I exchanged glances. This was the moment everything would change. Zara, sit down, Brianna said quietly. There's something you need to see. For the next hour, I watched Zara read through my analysis of her interactions with Brianna. I had documented specific examples of excellent ideas Zara had proposed, followed by immediate self-doubt after subtle disapproval from her aunt. I had traced patterns of language designed to undermine confidence while maintaining plausible deniability. Most importantly, I had analyzed Zara's actual capabilities when she forgot to be afraid of them. Her technical insights were sophisticated. Her user experience understanding was ahead of industry standards. Her natural project management approach was more effective than traditional methods. As Zara read, her expression shifted from confusion to recognition to something that looked like grief. This section here, she said, pointing to a specific analysis. You wrote that my database optimization suggestions were technically superior to current implementations, but that I abandoned them after interpreting disapproval that may not have been intended. That's correct. Your suggestions would have solved performance issues we've been struggling with for months. Zara looked at Brianna. Is this accurate? Have I been second-guessing good ideas because I thought you didn't approve? Brianna was trapped. She couldn't deny documented evidence without looking dishonest, but admitting the truth meant acknowledging years of psychological manipulation. Zara, you've always been sensitive to feedback. Sometimes that sensitivity prevents you from— No. Zara's voice was stronger than I'd ever heard it. Don't explain this away. I want a direct answer. Have you been telling me I'm incompetent when I'm actually not? The silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, Brianna spoke. I've been trying to protect you from overconfidence that could lead to mistakes. Protect me, Zara repeated the word slowly. By convincing me that every instinct I have is wrong, by making me doubt myself constantly, by positioning yourself as the only person who can guide me properly? That's not what I intended, but it's what happened. Zara stood up, still holding my analysis. According to this documentation, I've been demonstrating competence consistently, then immediately undermining myself because I've been trained to believe I can't trust my own judgment. She turned to me. How long have you been observing this pattern? Since the first week I started paying attention. But Zara, the most important thing in that analysis isn't what Brianna was doing. It's proof of what you're actually capable of when you trust yourself. Zara sat back down and reread several sections. These examples of my technical suggestions, you're saying they were good ideas? They were exceptional ideas. Ideas that could have advanced Project Aurora significantly if you hadn't been convinced to abandon them. But I felt so uncertain about them. I was sure I was missing something obvious. You were missing something. You were missing the confidence to trust your own expertise. Zara looked at Brianna with an expression I'd never seen before. How long has this been happening? Zara, family relationships are complicated. I've always wanted what's best for— How long? Zara's voice was sharp now. Brianna hesitated. Since you were young, I may have been overly protective about your decision-making. Overly protective or deliberately undermining? The question hung in the air. I realized that my documentation had forced a confrontation that was decades overdue. I need to think about this, Zara said finally. I need to process what this means. She gathered her things and left the office. Brianna and I sat in uncomfortable silence. You've destroyed my relationship with my niece, Brianna said. I've documented behavior that was already destroying her relationship with herself. The difference is, now she knows it wasn't her fault. And now what? You want your project back? You want me to step down? What's your end game here? I realized that Brianna still didn't understand what had actually happened. She thought this was about professional revenge, about getting Project Aurora returned to me. She had no idea that the real devastation was just beginning. Brianna, that analysis isn't just for you and Zara to read privately. It's in our shared drive, where the entire leadership team has access. Upper management reviews shared documentation regularly for project evaluations. Her face went pale. You put family psychological analysis in company documentation? I put workplace behavioral observations in professional project files, exactly where they belong. Any manager investigating Project Aurora's failures will find comprehensive documentation of leadership dynamics that contributed to those failures. The next morning, I received 3 separate meeting requests, one from upper management wanting to discuss leadership transition protocols, one from human resources requesting clarification about documented workplace concerns, and one from our legal department asking about potential liability issues related to family employment. By noon, word had spread throughout the company that something significant was happening with Project Aurora leadership. People were curious about why Zara had suddenly stopped attending meetings and why Brianna looked like she hadn't slept. The most devastating development came when other employees started coming forward with their own observations about Zara's treatment. Our graphic designer mentioned how Zara's initial concepts were always brilliant, but she would completely revise them after talking with Brianna. The development team confirmed that Zara's technical understanding was much stronger than she seemed to believe. Everyone had noticed, but nobody had understood what they were witnessing until my analysis provided context. Upper management called a meeting with all Project Aurora stakeholders. They had reviewed the transition documentation and wanted to address concerning patterns in project leadership. Zara attended that meeting, but she was different. She sat straighter, spoke more directly, and when she presented her ideas, she didn't immediately retreat into uncertainty. Instead, she defended her suggestions with technical reasoning and practical examples. It was stunning to watch. Without constant undermining, Zara was revealed to be exactly as capable as I had documented. More than capable, she was exceptional. But the personal cost was becoming apparent. Zara had stopped speaking to Brianna outside of absolutely necessary professional interactions. When someone mentioned their family relationship, Zara's expression went blank. The trust that had held their family together was completely shattered. Brianna tried to approach Zara after the meeting, but Zara walked away without acknowledgement. Beyond, who had positioned herself as essential to Zara's success, was now completely shut out of Lisa's life. 2 weeks later, upper management announced that Project Aurora would continue under Zara's leadership with appropriate support and oversight. Brianna would be transitioning to a different division. The company had determined that the previous leadership transition had been poorly managed and created unnecessary dysfunction. I was asked to stay on as a consulting advisor to help Zara navigate the project complexities, but it became clear quickly that she didn't need much help. Once she trusted her own judgment, her natural capabilities flourished. The revenge I had planned was more complete than I had imagined. Brianna lost her authority within the company, her reputation as a mentor, and most devastatingly, her relationship with the niece she claimed to love. Everyone now knew she had been psychologically manipulating family under the guise of professional development. But Zara's situation was perhaps even more brutal. She had to rebuild her entire sense of self while processing the reality that someone she trusted had been systematically destroying her confidence for decades. Every family gathering, every career decision, every moment of self-doubt now had to be re-examined through the lens of deliberate manipulation. The success she was experiencing professionally was overshadowed by the devastating work of healing from psychological abuse. She would have to learn to trust her own mind while grieving the loss of family relationships she thought were supportive. 6 months later, Project Aurora launched successfully under Zara's leadership. The software exceeded performance expectations and generated significant revenue for the company. Zara received recognition as an innovative project manager with exceptional technical insight. But she told me privately that professional success felt hollow when it came at the cost of understanding how manipulated her entire life had been. The most brutal aspect of my revenge was that it forced everyone involved to live with permanent knowledge of what had really been happening. Brianna couldn't pretend she had been helpful. Zara couldn't unknow the truth about her family dynamics. Their relationship was irreparably damaged because the foundation had been built on psychological manipulation. I had exposed the truth and let it destroy them both in different ways. The revenge required no ongoing effort from me. The knowledge itself was enough to change everything forever. As I finish telling you this story, I want you to understand something important. This wasn't about getting my project back or proving I was right about management decisions. This was about refusing to watch someone's capabilities be systematically destroyed by someone who claimed to care about them. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply revealing the truth and letting people face the consequences of what they've actually been doing. Sometimes justice means forcing someone to see themselves clearly for the first time. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever watched someone's confidence being undermined by people who claim to be helping them, please share this video. Like and subscribe because stories like this need to be told, and people need to understand that psychological manipulation in families and workplaces is real and devastating. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to choose between staying silent and exposing a truth that would change everything? Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is document what's really happening and let the truth speak for itself.